At a family dinner, my sister announced she was pregnant with my husband's baby. Stunned, I smiled and said, "Congratulations." Confused, they asked, "Why aren't you angry?" I replied, "Because I already sold our house and emptied the bank account." They screamed as my lawyer served them both with lawsuits. My family stood in silence. I never thought this would be my life. I never thought I'd be the woman who got cheated on by her husband and her sister. But here I am. And instead of crying, I'm watching them drown in the mess they made while I stand there, holding all the cards. It was late. Jake had already gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I had left my laptop at work, so I grabbed his. I just needed to check something quickly, an email, nothing serious. When I opened the screen, his messages were already up. And there it was. A thread of texts. At first, it didn't register. The name on the screen was familiar. Nicole. My sister. And then I read it. "I can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." I stared at the message. My brain refused to understand. Then I scrolled up. More texts. More confessions. More disgusting, gut-wrenching details. The first one that hit me like a train? "I wish I had met you first." That's when I knew. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. They were in love. Or at least, that's what they thought. I kept scrolling. Photos. Videos. Explicit messages. Plans to meet up in hotels. A secret world they built right under my nose. My hands shook. My face felt hot. I thought I would scream, but nothing came out. Instead, I closed the laptop. Stood up. Walked to the bathroom. And threw up. I sat on the cold tile floor, my whole body trembling. The love of my life. The man I built a home with. The man who promised me forever. And my sister. My little sister. The girl I protected. The girl I stood up for. It felt like my whole life had been ripped out from under me. Then, something inside me changed. The pain turned to something else. Rage. Not the kind that makes you cry and scream. The kind that burns slow and deep. So I made a plan. I started small. I stopped initiating conversations with Jake. Stopped asking about his day. Let him believe I was just busy with work. Then I saw a lawyer. Turns out, Illinois takes cheating very seriously when it comes to divorce. Adultery can influence financial settlements. And considering I had screenshots, emails, and even hotel receipts, thanks to my lawyer's private investigator, I had everything I needed. Next, the house. Jake and I owned our home together. But guess whose name was on the deed? Mine. I called a real estate agent and put it on the market. Quietly. Privately. All the paperwork went through before I said a word. Then, the bank accounts. Jake thought he was smart by keeping a separate savings account. What he didn't know? I had access to everything. Drained. Every last cent. I waited for the perfect moment. And then, it happened. We hosted a dinner at our house. My parents. My brother. My sister. Everyone gathered in my dining room, laughing, drinking, eating. Nicole stood up. She cleared her throat dramatically, like she was about to make the most exciting announcement in the world. Then, she said it. "I'm pregnant." Gasps. Cheers. My mom's eyes filled with tears. Then she smiled and said the words that changed everything. "And Jake is the father." Silence. Jake froze. Nicole beamed. My mother clutched her chest. My dad put down his fork. And me? I took a sip of my wine. Set the glass down carefully. Then, I smiled. "Congratulations." Nicole's smile faltered. "Wait, what?" I tilted my head, still smiling. Why would I be mad? Jake looked at me like I had lost my mind. Nicole laughed nervously. "I mean, this is kind of a big deal." I nodded. "It is. Which is why I already sold the house and emptied the bank account." Jake's face turned white. Nicole's hands shook. My mother gasped. Then, right on cue, there was a knock at the door. My lawyer. He stepped inside, holding 2 envelopes. One for Jake. One for Nicole. "You've both been served." Nicole grabbed hers with shaking hands. "What is this?" My lawyer adjusted his glasses. "A lawsuit. Alienation of affection. It's illegal in Illinois to interfere in a marriage. You can be sued for it. Nicole turned even paler. She's suing me? Jake was still too stunned to speak. But then he snapped. You psycho. You can't do this. I sipped my wine again. Oh, but I can. And I did. At this point, my brother started laughing. My father rubbed his temples. My mother burst into tears. Nicole stood there shaking. This is a joke. You wouldn't actually sue your own sister. I set my glass down. You slept with my husband. You got pregnant with his baby. You did this. Not me. She opened her mouth. Closed it. No words. Jake finally exploded. You think this makes you smart? You're just bitter because I don't love you anymore. I laughed. Like, actually laughed. Jake, you don't even love yourself. Silence. I grabbed my purse. Stood up. And walked right out the front door. Because that house wasn't mine anymore. And neither was he. A week passed. Then 2. Jake and Nicole moved in together, shocking, right? I heard from my brother that they were struggling. Jake had no money. Nicole had no clue how to take care of herself. Then, the call came. It was my mom. Sweetheart, Nicole is really struggling. She made a mistake. Can't you forgive her? I took a deep breath. And then I said, Mom, you have no idea what's coming next. Because I wasn't done yet. I barely slept after that family dinner. Not because I was heartbroken, no, that part had passed. What kept me up was the anticipation. The satisfaction. I had been planning this for months, and now I got to watch everything crumble around them. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom, 9:17 a.m. we need to talk. Call me. Mom, 9:30 a.m. This is getting out of hand, sweetheart. Nicole, 10:02 a.m. what the hell is wrong with you? Jake, 10:15 a.m. you're going to regret this. I smiled at that one. Oh, am I? I turned my phone on silent and went out for breakfast. Alone. And it was the best damn meal I had eaten in years. 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. She's trying to fight the lawsuit, he said. She's claiming she didn't interfere in your marriage because you and Jake were already falling apart. I laughed. She really thinks that's gonna work? No. Not with the messages we have. Not with the timeline we built. I sat back in my chair, watching the city move outside my apartment window. She's panicking, my lawyer continued. And so is Jake. Good, I said. Let them panic. But what I wasn't expecting was just how much Nicole would spiral. That night, she showed up at my apartment. Banging on my door. Screaming. I opened it just enough to look at her. She looked rough. Her hair was a mess. She was crying. And she looked like she hadn't slept in days. What do you want? I asked, completely calm. She shoved the papers in my face. You're really gonna sue me? Your own sister? I leaned against the doorframe. That's what happens when you sleep with someone's husband, Nicole. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You're insane. You're actually insane. Do you know how much stress this is causing me? Do you know what you're doing to our family? That made me laugh. What I'm doing? I repeated. Nicole, you did this to yourself. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You just want revenge. I tilted my head. And? She froze. That's when I knew. She had expected me to break down. To forgive her. To fight for Jake. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Nicole, I said slowly. I let you get away with everything growing up. I let you take. I let you get bailed out of every mistake. But this? This is different. Her eyes filled with tears. But. I'm pregnant. I shrugged. Not my problem. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, with one final glare, she turned and stormed off. I shut the door. And smiled. A week passed. Jake was still calling me, but I never answered. Then, out of nowhere, my bank sent me a fraud alert. A $3,000 charge attempt from our old joint account. I called the bank immediately. Can you tell me where the charge was made? I asked. The woman on the line paused. It was declined, but it was attempted at a car dealership. I almost laughed. Jake was trying to buy a car. With my money. I immediately went to my lawyer. Can we freeze anything else? He smiled. Already done. Jake was desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. Jake and I had mutual friends. People who knew both of us, but some leaned toward me. One of those friends? His boss. One morning, I got a text. Alex, 7:45 a.m. Hey. Just a heads up, Jake didn't show up to work today. Or yesterday. Or the day before that. He's on thin ice. I raised an eyebrow. Jake loved his job. It was his whole identity. If he was skipping work, he was spiraling. A few hours later, I got another text. Alex, 12:30 p.m. Rumor is he got into a fight with Nicole. Big one. Someone in their building heard screaming. Now that was interesting. Because as far as I knew, Nicole had nothing. No money. No career. No savings. Jake had left me for a woman who had even less than him. And now? Now it was all falling apart. I grabbed my coffee, sat back, and waited for the next bomb to drop. Because I knew it was coming. I got a call from my mom later that night. Her voice was shaky. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. I sighed. What now? She hesitated. Then she whispered, Nicole told me, she doesn't think the baby is Jake's. I sat up so fast my heart nearly stopped. Come again? She's not sure, my mom repeated, voice thick with shame. She was with someone else too. I stared at the wall. Then, slowly, I smiled. Because now I really had the upper hand. I sat there, gripping my phone, as my mother repeated the words I thought I misheard. Nicole isn't sure if the baby is Jake's. I didn't even know how to react. I wanted to laugh, but I also felt like I was watching a train crash in slow motion. This was the sister who stood up at a family dinner and proudly announced that she was pregnant with my husband's baby, acting like she had won something. And now? Now she wasn't even sure if it was his. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow breath, and asked, who else could be the father? My mother hesitated. Sweetheart, I don't know if you want to hear this. Tell me. She sighed. There's a possibility it's Ethan's. I went still. Ethan. Jake's best friend. This just kept getting better. Ethan had been friends with Jake since college. They were always close, but over the last year, their friendship had started to crack. I never knew why. But now I had a pretty good guess. I did some digging. Turns out, Ethan had been hanging around Nicole a lot. They'd been spotted together at bars. Someone even saw them leaving a hotel a month before she got pregnant. I could barely keep my excitement contained. So, what did I do? I sent Ethan a message. Me, 11:45 a.m. Hey. We need to talk. He responded in under 5 minutes. Ethan, 11:49 a.m. I was wondering when you'd reach out. Bingo. I met Ethan at a cafe the next day. He looked stressed. Like he hadn't slept in days. Let me guess, I said, stirring my coffee. Nicole's been keeping secrets from you too. He sighed, rubbing his face. I knew she was seeing Jake. I just didn't care. We were never exclusive. I raised an eyebrow. But now she's pregnant. He let out a bitter laugh. And now she's claiming it's his. But, between you and me? He leaned in. I'm pretty sure it's mine. I took a sip of my drink, hiding my smirk. Jake left me for a woman who might be carrying his best friend's baby. God, you couldn't make this up. I tilted my head. Does Jake know? Ethan smirked. Not yet. Oh, this was going to be fun. A few nights later, I got a call from Alex, Jake's boss. Alex, 10:22 p.m. You need to know something. Jake just got fired. I blinked. Wait. What? He's been missing work. Drinking. And today? He lost it on a client. He got into a shouting match in the middle of a meeting. They had no choice. I covered my mouth to hide my laughter. So let me get this straight, I said, grinning. Jake has no job, no money, and possibly no baby? Pretty much. It was perfect. But then, things took a darker turn. The next day, my mom called again. She sounded panicked. Nicole is threatening to leave the state. I frowned. What? She's scared, honey. She says you're ruining her life. I almost choked. I'm ruining her life? She thinks Jake will leave if he finds out the baby isn't his. And Ethan won't step up either. So she's running? I asked. Great. Let her go. My mother gasped. She's your sister. She stopped being my sister when she crawled into my husband's bed. There was a long silence. Then my mom said, she wants money. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the phone. From who? She asked me to ask you. I nearly fell off my chair. I took a deep breath. Tell Nicole that if she thinks she's getting a single cent from me, she's even dumber than I thought. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, 9 p.m. You think you're so smart, don't you? I knew exactly who it was. I ignored it. But then, an hour later, bang. 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 Someone was pounding on my apartment door. I grabbed my phone, walked to the peephole, and, yep. Jake. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Messy hair. Red eyes. Probably drunk. I sighed, opened the door just enough to glare at him. What the hell do you want? He swayed slightly. You ruined my life. I smiled sweetly. Oh, Jake. You did that all by yourself. His jaw clenched. You took everything from me. I folded my arms. You mean like how you took my marriage? My trust? My home? I tilted my head. Yeah, funny how that works. I made a mistake, he slurred. But you, he jabbed a finger at me. You didn't have to go this far. I narrowed my eyes. Go home, Jake. But then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. I know what you did. I stiffened. Excuse me? He smirked. You think you're the only one with secrets? I found something, too. He reached into his pocket. Pulled out his phone. And then, he showed me something that changed everything. Jake stood in my doorway, smirking like he had finally won. His phone was in his hand, screen tilted toward me. I know what you did. I didn't move. Didn't react. But my stomach twisted into knots. I kept my face calm. What are you talking about? His smirk widened. He scrolled on his phone, then turned the screen toward me. My breath caught. It was a bank statement. Not from our shared accounts, those were long gone. This was mine. One of my private accounts. The one I had transferred all our money into. I kept my voice even. How did you get that? Jake chuckled darkly. I have my ways. He tucked his phone back into his pocket. You think you're the only one who can play dirty? I clenched my jaw. You cheated on me, Jake. With my own sister. I took what was mine. His face twisted. That was our money. Not anymore. He took a slow step forward. I stood my ground. You really want to drag this out? He asked, voice low. Because I can make things worse for you. I folded my arms. Go ahead. Try me. His smirk faltered. He expected me to back down. To beg. To apologize. But I wasn't that woman anymore. His hands clenched into fists. You're a cold-hearted bitch. I smiled. And you're unemployed, broke, and stuck with a pregnant woman who might be carrying your best friend's baby. The vein in his neck pulsed. He looked like he wanted to punch the wall. Then, another voice cut in. I knew it. We both turned. Nicole. She stood in the hallway, eyes wide, lips parted in shock. She must have heard everything. She turned to Jake, voice rising. You actually looked through her accounts? Are you insane? Jake stammered. I was just, she cut him off. You said you loved me. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, honey. He doesn't love anyone but himself. Nicole ignored me. She was still staring at Jake, her face going from shocked to furious. Do you even care about me? Or was I just some way to hurt her? Jake sighed, rubbing his face. Nicole, not now, but she wasn't done. You knew this baby might not be yours. And you still pretended to be the victim? Silence. Jake didn't say a word. And that silence was everything Nicole needed to hear. Her voice broke. You son of a bitch. Then she slapped him. Hard. Jake stumbled back, face red with anger and humiliation. Nicole turned to me, breathing hard. For a second, I thought she'd say something. Apologize, maybe. Beg for forgiveness. But no. She just swallowed hard, shook her head, and walked away. Jake turned back to me, still rubbing his cheek. His whole body shook with rage. "This isn't over," he muttered. I let out a slow breath. "Yes, Jake. It is." His jaw clenched. I stepped closer. My voice was low, calm, deadly. "You lost everything because you couldn't keep it in your pants," I said. "That's not my fault. That's not Nicole's fault. That's yours." He glared at me. "You think you won?" I tilted my head. "I don't have to think anything." I gestured at the door. "Now get the hell out of my building." Jake's face twisted with something unreadable. Then, finally, he turned and walked away. For good. The next few weeks were interesting. Jake spiraled. Hard. No job. No home. No money. And Nicole? She disappeared. Vanished off social media. Stopped answering my mother's calls. No one knew where she went. Until one day, I got a message from Ethan. "Ethan, 2:13 p.m. Nicole called me. She's moving. Leaving the state. No idea where she's going." I stared at the text. Then I typed back. "Me, 2:15 p.m. let her run. It's not my problem anymore." Months passed. The divorce went through. I walked away with everything. Jake tried to fight me for money. He lost. He tried to get sympathy from our mutual friends. That failed too. Nicole? No one heard from her again. Some say she moved to Texas. Others say she ran off with a new guy. I don't know. And I don't care. Because for the first time in years, I was free. And I won. People always ask me if I regret what I did. If I feel bad for ruining Jake's life. If I feel guilty for suing Nicole. And my answer? No. Because they didn't feel bad when they betrayed me. They didn't care when they destroyed my marriage. So why the hell should I care about what happened to them? If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sometimes, karma needs a little push. And I was more than happy to give it one.